we're driving back from New York City to Montreal, and we have like 2.5 hours left in the drive. One kid is sleeping, and she just woke up. Oh no. I gotta talk about something that's been on my mind since I read about it. Conor McGregor. What did you do? What did you do? Okay, here's the deal. And this might be one of the problems I had as a lawyer, is that I felt bad for the other party even when they got everything they deserved. Conor McGregor has screwed up so badly for everyone involved, and I still feel bad for him because I know that what he did was just one of those absolute moments of stupidity where you're not thinking about the consequences and the potential consequences of what can happen from what you're about to do. When I was a kid, like 10 years old, I threw a gumball out the window of a car to hit a car as we drove by it, and like the second the gumball left my hands, I realized how utterly stupid what I had just done was. Then it smacks against the car. My father heard it. I learned a lesson about that there. I'll tell you after. I learned a lesson in gravity and parental gravity. I know that this was just one of those situations where everyone was acting like a bunch of buffoons. No one was thinking about the potential consequences of what they were doing, and none of them foresaw the consequences, the dire consequences of what would happen by chucking a dolly at the window of a bus. They probably just thought it would bounce off, it would be a funny story, haha, oh, that conflict escalated. No one thought for a second that the dolly might go through the window and potentially seriously hurt people in the heart. No one thought that it might not go through the window, but maybe shatter the glass and hurt somebody. Nobody thought that shattered glass would scratch someone's cornea, or other people cut their faces up to the point where 3 fights from UFC 223 would have to be canceled. No one stopped for a second to think about it. It's one of the the benefits, maybe it's the only benefit of having a hyperactive neurotic mind, is that I can think and live through all of the foreseeable consequences, and even the unforeseeable ones, in a split second. My first thought would have been, maybe that dolly's gonna bounce off the bus and hit me. That might have been my first reaction, but whatever. A momentary act of stupidity that is going to have consequences that are going to last a long time and cost an arm and a leg. There's a Vegas website where they're taking bets on whether or not Conor's gonna do jail time, whether or not he's gonna be banned from the UFC for life. I'm gonna answer those 2 questions in a second with my predictions, but this is why this situation is just bad for everybody. First of all, I love Conor. I loved Conor. He was a good role model. He was fun to watch. He was a character, and he was not a stereotype. And this is the exact problem. Like Conor with his gang fighting with another gang, it's exactly what Dana White has been fighting against for the last 20 years, trying to make the UFC mainstream, trying to shatter all those stereotypes that everyone has about the UFC being run by criminals, like just buffoons who go in there and punch each other in the face. And then you have this incident, just basically like absolutely wrong. People running amok, like the fighters in the UFC running amok like a bunch of wild animals. This is like, you know, Dana White tried to take the UFC from the original heydays when people were like stomping on each other's faces and kicking faces to downed opponents, where everyone was looking at it like it's totally unwatchable. Make it mainstream, make it something that the masses can follow, and then you have this gang warfare within the UFC. It's bad for everybody.
So all Dana White's work is basically like that dog
Okay, look,
into her window, shattering. So everybody thinks it's a bunch of buffoons punching each other with dolls.
This is not going to reflect poorly on Dana White. It just is going to create or confirm a stereotype that exists among the masses, that the UFC is buffoonery and not actual arts of the mixed martial nature. It isn't. It is fantastic. So the fighters have discipline, they have respect. The ones that do. The ones that don't, it's a problem. Now, 2 questions. Is he going to do jail time, and is he going to be banned for life from the UFC? My prediction for the first, no, he's not going to do jail time. He's going to do community service. He might be on probation, and he's going to probably pay a hefty fine. Is the UFC going to ban him for life from the UFC?
Maybe.
Absolutely not, is my prediction, and here's why. I'm not a fan of banning anyone from the UFC for life for something they do outside of the ring, exceptions aside. When they banned Jon Jones for his whole incident and stripped him of his title, I thought that was totally unfair. What someone does outside of the ring, outside of the octagon, should not have consequences in the octagon, normally speaking. Jon Jones got into a car accident at 3 in the morning, broke a pregnant woman's arms, hit and run, was seen like grabbing a stash of money from the trunk of his car before he left. They banned him for a while from the UFC. They stripped him of his titles. I thought it was a total injustice as far as the UFC goes. What's fair about it? What he does outside of the octagon should not have an impact on what happens to him within the octagon. Although I suspect they probably do have some sort of provisions in their UFC contracts that allows for it, whatever. When Paul Daly got banned for life from the UFC for punching Koscheck after the bell, that's in the octagon, and that's like a violation of one of those fundamental rules that you have to rely on in order to have civil combat, is that you need to know that when the fight's over, the fight's over. Anyone who violates that rule is really asking for it, although I still think that Paul Daly being banned for life for that was a little severe, because there have been a number of other fighters who've done pretty bad things after the bell. Not necessarily as egregiously after the bell as Paul Daly, but I forget what the guy's name is, the one who did the ankle locks. He's known for the ankle locks, who held on way too long and hurt somebody's knee. In the recent fight, I also forget their names. A clear knockout shot after the bell, maybe a nanosecond after the bell, but it was obvious. That guy's not banned for life, whatever. And I love Paul Daly also, but that's a side issue. So those are my two predictions. Where are we going with this? Oh,
I think he's going to get suspended for a year.
He might. My daughter thinks Conor's going to get suspended for a year. Not for life, because the rematch, or the match, of Conor versus Khabib, which were the rivaling gangs that started this whole thing, is going to be a moneymaker that even Dana White is not going to be able to avoid. And also, you know, you can't keep suspending your most watchable fighters from the UFC because of things they do outside of the octagon. When John Jones was out, I really lost interest in the UFC for a while. So that's it. It would be too much of a money loss to happen, and Dana White is a principled man, but he's not stupid. So no way. And they're going to make a McGregor-Khabib fight. You know it. And I'm going to pay to watch it, because it's going to be awesome. But Conor is in for such a rough road for the next little while. Not just the criminal stuff, because the criminal stuff is serious. Not just because he's going to now, you know, okay, criminal stuff over the top. He's going to get sued civilly, guaranteed, by the 3 people that he injured. There's going to be a civil suit there. I think there's probably going to be a civil suit from the UFC against Conor, or there's going to be some form of settlement there, because what he did, if what we see in the news now is true, led to 3 fights being canceled. That costs money to the UFC. That's going to cost viewership. That causes damages to the UFC, directly responsible to the extra contractual tort committed by McGregor by throwing a dolly at the window of a bus carrying fighters for the UFC 223. So McGregor's in for some criminal problems. He's in for certainly some financial, civil problems. And everyone knows that he's sitting on $30 million that he just got for fighting Mayweather. So they know that he's got the money to pay off some lawsuits. Very disappointing. It's very disappointing. I like McGregor. I still like him. I think this is like one of those situations where that line from Batman, you either die a hero or live long enough to become a villain. I think, unfortunately, the money, the fame certainly got to his head a little bit, where he started taking his role as the villain. Not the villain, but like the guy. It's a good expression. You'll think about it. We'll talk about it after. But no, it just went to his head. There's too much fame, too much celebrity status, too much money, too much riding an image of invincible fighter that makes you not think about the consequences of throwing a dolly at the window of a moving bus. You know what I mean? Okay, whatever. All that to say, I might have to watch the fight tonight anyhow. But
oh wait, I thought they canceled.
No, they canceled 3 of the fights. There's still 10 more fights, and they had to change the main event. McGregor, I'm disappointed in you. You should know better. You should have just whatever. Hindsight is 20/20, but foresight is not that hard sometimes. Peace out.